When I was 8 years old, my grandfather told me never to go into the cornfield after dark. He didn't explain why. He just looked me square in the eyes, his weathered hands tightening around the wooden arms of his rocking chair, and said, "If the sun's down, the corn is his." I laughed, thinking it was one of his country stories, like the ones about will-o'-the-wisps or haunted scarecrows. But he didn't laugh with me. He just turned his eyes back toward the field that stretched out behind the farmhouse, endless rows of stalks whispering in the wind. We moved to Grandpa's farm when my dad lost his job. My mom said it would be just for a few months, but those months turned into a year. I didn't mind. The town was small, the skies were big, and the house had a warm, creaky character. But that cornfield, it gave me chills even in daylight. The field bordered the backyard, thick and tall, always swaying, even when there was no breeze. Sometimes I thought I saw movement deep in the stalks, shapes that didn't belong. My dog, Chester, refused to go near it. Once I asked Grandpa who planted it. "Don't know," he said. "Been here before me. I just harvest it when it comes ripe." "But how does it grow every year without planting?" I asked. He just looked at me and said, "He tends to it." When I asked who he was, Grandpa just shook his head and muttered, "We don't say his name." I was 11 the first time I broke the rule. It was the end of August, the air thick with bugs and heat. I'd been playing with my flashlight after dinner and dared myself to go out after dark. I didn't plan to go far, just past the first few rows of corn, maybe. Enough to prove to myself that the stories were just that. I waited until my parents were watching TV and Grandpa was asleep in his chair. I grabbed the flashlight and crept out the back door. The moon was full, casting long shadows across the field. I stepped onto the edge, the dry husks crackling beneath my feet. The first row swallowed me, and then the second. I told myself I'd count to 10 and then turn around. 1, 2, 3. Something shifted beside me. I froze, flashlight darting left and right. Nothing. 4, 5. The air grew colder. 6, 7. Behind me, the stalks rustled. 8. A snap, like a breaking bone, echoed nearby. I turned and ran. Branches clawed at me. The flashlight flew from my hand. I crashed through the stalks and burst out of the corn, panting, scratched, and terrified. The back door creaked open. Grandpa stood there, silhouetted by the kitchen light. "He saw you," he said softly. That night I had a dream. I stood in the middle of the cornfield. The stalks were black, the sky blood red. Something tall and thin stood among the rows. I couldn't see its face, but I felt its eyes. It wore a tattered coat made of stitched burlap and a hat that looked like it was made of dried leaves. As it walked toward me, its arms stretched wide, too wide, and I realized it wasn't walking, it was gliding. And the worst part, it smiled. For the next few weeks, things were off. I'd find muddy footprints outside my window in the morning, long, narrow prints that didn't match any boots we owned. Chester refused to leave the porch. My flashlight, which I lost in the corn, showed up one morning on my pillow, still on. At dinner, I finally told Grandpa what had happened. He listened without interrupting, then stood and went to the attic. He returned with a box filled with old tools and dusty bundles of herbs. From it, he pulled out a small wooden figure, a man-shaped doll wrapped in dried corn husks and tied with red string. "This keeps him out," he said, pressing it into my hand. "Put it under your pillow. He comes for the ones who break the rule. You were lucky." I didn't sleep much that night. The next evening, we heard the screaming. It came from the neighbor's farm, half a mile down the road. Sheriff's car lights lit up the night, and my dad went over to help. He came back an hour later, pale and silent. The Miller boy, 13 years old, had been found in the corn, torn open. They said it was a wild animal, but Grandpa just shook his head and muttered, Harvest comes early this year. That night he nailed herbs and trinkets to every window, salted the doors, hung a horseshoe over my bed. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. He looked at me with tired eyes. "Because you saw him, and now he remembers you." Days passed, and the field began to change. The corn turned black and brittle, though it wasn't fall yet. Crows gathered by the hundreds, silent and watching. Every night I heard the whispers. They came from the corn, low, rustling voices that never stopped. Sometimes they called my name. One night I made the mistake of answering back. "What do you want?" Silence. Then, from just beyond the edge of the field, a voice rasped, "You!" I screamed. Grandpa ran in with a shotgun. But there was nothing outside, just the stalks swaying. On the first day of October, the field died. Not in patches, but all at once. One morning it was green and full. By nightfall it was gray, dry, and lifeless. And that's when the scarecrow appeared. We didn't have one before. But now, in the middle of the field, it stood, tall, with burlap skin and hollow eyes, arms stretched wide on a crooked wooden frame. No one had put it there, and it wasn't tied to the post. Its arms just hung there. Grandpa grew worse. He stayed up at night muttering prayers in languages I didn't know. He drew chalk symbols around my bed and kept candles burning until dawn. "He's coming," he'd whisper. "He waits until the veil thins. All Hallows' Eve." My parents dismissed it all as nonsense. "Old man's losing it," my dad said. "Too many ghost stories." I wanted to believe him. Until Halloween night. The power went out just after sunset. The candles Grandpa kept in the kitchen flickered like they knew something was wrong. The whole house seemed to breathe, every floorboard groaning under an invisible weight. Then came the knock. 3 slow, heavy knocks on the back door. We all froze. Dad grabbed a bat and went to the kitchen. "Probably a prank," he muttered. But when he opened the door, no one was there, except a single corn husk doll lying on the step. Grandpa swore and slammed the door. He turned to me. "Upstairs, now." As I climbed, the whispers returned, louder now, urgent, hungry. Through the window, I saw the scarecrow was gone, and something tall moved between the rows. At midnight, the front door opened on its own. Cold wind howled into the house. The candles blew out. And in the dark, I heard him. Dragging limbs, wet footsteps, a low, wheezing breath. He was inside. Dad shouted. I heard a crash. Mom screamed. I hid under the bed, clutching the corn husk doll, whispering Grandpa's prayers. The door creaked open. Heavy feet stepped into the room. He knew where I was. A low voice rasped, "Come to the field." The bed creaked as something leaned over it. I shut my eyes. Then, bang! A shotgun blast. "Go!" Grandpa yelled. "Out the window! Now!" I jumped. Branches clawed me, the ground cracked my ribs, but I ran. Into the woods, past the barn. I didn't stop. Behind me, the house burned. They found me the next morning, shivering in the ditch. My parents were never found. Only Grandpa's shotgun and a single smoldering boot print in the living room. They blamed faulty wiring for the fire. I never told them what really happened. I'm older now. The farm was sold, the field bulldozed. Subdivisions sprang up where the corn once stood. But every year, as October ends, I see the signs again. Black corn in the markets, crows gathering, whispers on the wind. He's still out there, waiting for someone to break the rule, because the harvest man never forgets.